Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and you are watching The Rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. This one is going out to Lucas Sutliff. He says, hey, Vic, you are the man, and apparently third time is the charm. We're going to be getting to Sam Witwer right after The Rundown, but let's get started with Lucas's Rundown. The world's most badass vampire slayer might be getting a reboot, but it might take a while to stake a claim to audiences. A reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is reportedly on the way. Speaking at a recent TV conference, Fox TV Group Chair Gary Newman revealed that they're having frequent discussions with creator Joss Whedon about making a new Buffy series, but they won't move forward until Whedon decides the time is right. How long that will take is anyone's guess. Buffy the Vampire Slayer originally aired from 1997 to 2003 and pretty much defined that era in television. Hopefully a reboot becomes a reality. I really want this. I think that they could do some incredible things with a brand new Buffy for us. But let's move on. New content is about to hit the table in the digital card game Hearthstone. Blizzard Entertainment has announced an all-new expansion called The Witchwood. It adds 135 new cards themed around the scary kingdom Gilneas, and the expansion also introduces new gameplay mechanics like the ability to swap attack and health values of cards or on the fly. Blizzard is also introducing new single-player events called Monster Hunts, where players take on enemies in different locations. The Witchwood expansion hits Hearthstone next month. I haven't played Hearthstone in ages, but apparently this audience is enormous and it isn't scaling down anytime soon. So congrats to all you Hearthstone players. You got lots of new content there. Now, it looks like Square Enix has a popular new franchise on their hands thanks to Nier Automata. Last year's action RPG has now shipped more than 2.5 million units to stores, with more than 500,000 of those units shipping in the last 6 months. This is good news for Square Enix and developer Platinum Games, and it also bodes well for the future of the Nier games. Automata was considered a risky move because of its predecessor. The first game in the series wasn't as big a hit when it was released in 2010. The success of the new game means that Square Enix could turn Nier into a full-fledged franchise, similar to what they've done with their biggest titles like Final Fantasy, and that sounds like music to my ears. I loved Nier Automata, and I especially love that there is a lot of support going out to Platinum Games, which I feel is still one of the strongest developers on planet Earth, and I am very much looking forward to seeing what they've got up their sleeves, and hopefully Bayonetta 3 kicks some serious butt. It looks like Ubisoft might finally be sneaking out a new entry in one of their biggest franchises. A new Splinter Cell game might be in the works, and best of all, it might be coming this year. A listing for an unannounced title simply called Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell 2018 was briefly posted this morning on Amazon Canada's website. Good job, Canada. Although it has since been taken down. This could have just been a mistake on Amazon's part, but they have accidentally leaked unannounced games in the past. Good job, Canada. Fans have been waiting for a new Splinter Cell. Fans like me have been waiting for a new Splinter Cell. The last game, Blacklist, was released in 2013, so now would be a good time for Ubisoft to bring that franchise back. I am very, very excited about this news in particular. I think that Sam Fisher is one of the coolest characters in all the video games, and I've loved almost all of the Splinter Cell games in the past. I think that UBTO's, that's Ubisoft Toronto's developers, and the team there that have built the Splinter Cell games most recently have been kind of overlooked, and I feel like this would be a good time for them to come back and triumphantly regain an audience. I don't know how it fits in there with their games as a service kind of attitude that Ubisoft seems to be adopting right now, but I am psyched about this idea, and I have my fingers crossed that we're going to see some really cool stuff at E3 from Ubisoft on there. The thing that I haven't heard much of is their Toys to Life, the Spaceship Toys to Life game. I feel like that's sort of kind of sitting in the ethers a little bit. Maybe they want to launch it big over the summer or something. I was at Toy Fair. I didn't see any presence of that game and those toys there, which was a little strange, but clearly Ubisoft has got some big smash successes, and they want to scale back the amount of games that they want to make and keep people locked into the games that they are building. So we'll see if Splinter Cell becomes one of those kinds of titles. But my fingers are crossed. I would love that. And I would also love more Buffy. And, I'm going to be talking about Joss Whedon a little bit later in the show, because I'm going to be diving into my picks for my pecking order of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. We've also got a review of Thor Thor Ragnarok. So Joss Whedon, in my opinion, maybe a little bit muddied by sort of recent events and some of the stuff that's come to light about him and his character, but God, he's made some amazing stuff over the years, and Buffy counts as that. I think a reboot would be fantastic. I mean, it's been rebooted from the film to the long-running TV show already, and he created all of these cool characters that should continue on. Obviously, they exist in comic book form, and Joss Whedon's been pretty smart at finding different ways to kind of keep us engaged in that universe, but I think a new show would be great. I think that'd be super cool. So I hope that news comes together too. And again, congratulations to all of our friends at Platinum Games. That's great, huge news about Nier Automata. If you haven't played this game, it's incredible. It's an action RPG with a very kind of twisted and surreal universe that's crafted for you. A lot of robots and cybernetic sort of organisms, and the last vestiges of this dystopian culture that you're sort of trying to, pry into the mysteries of and solve. It's stunning. It's beautiful. It's got a poignant quality about it as well, because you really start to care about these robot creations. And, it's got the platinum thumb candy in there as well. It's just fun to play. So I hope we get more from them and from this franchise. I think that would be rad. And we're going to be jumping onto our chat with Sam in just a moment. But right now, I think it's time for us to take a look at this day in Everything Cool. Welcome to This Day in Everything Cool for March 13th. On this day in 1997, something very strange happened in the skies over Phoenix, Arizona. The infamous and very mysterious Phoenix Lights appeared from 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. with thousands of people in the Phoenix area and parts of Mexico seeing unexplained lights in the night sky. Many witnesses claim that the lights appeared in a V shape, while others claim each light moved independently from one another. As for explanations, many assume that the lights came from alien spaceships or top-secret government aircrafts, but skeptics have pointed out that the path of the lights corresponds with commercial aircraft routes. The Phoenix Lights still remain officially unexplained. On March 13th, 1986, one of the biggest tech companies in the world became the biggest tech company in the world. Microsoft went public on the stock exchange for the first time, starting at $21 a share. Investors rushed to buy into the company thanks to the growing influence of the Windows operating system, and the shares closed at almost $28 that same day. The rising value of Microsoft stock made a billionaire out of co-founder Bill Gates, with him becoming the richest man in the world a few years later, and all that money helped Microsoft increase their influence in the software and hardware industry. Today, Microsoft stock is worth more than $96 a share. March 13th, 1781 was an important day for those of us who enjoy childish puns. That was the day the astronomer William Herschel discovered the alien planet Uranus. It had technically been observed by humans long before that, even going back so far as ancient Greece, but Herschel was the first to correctly recognize Uranus as a planet. He named it after Uranus, the Greek god of the sky, and it has since become a favorite of children and childish adults who enjoy intentionally mispronouncing the name for a cheap and easy laugh. Also, I'm not sure why it took so long to discover Uranus, given how big it is. There, see how easy that was? Uranus is named after the god of the sky, but March 13th, 2007 was an important day for the God of War. The PS2 game God of War 2 launched in North America, continuing the hack-and-slash adventures of the god-slaying anti-hero Kratos. Like the first game, which was released 2 years earlier, this one was developed by Sony's Santa Monica studio, and it was one of the last big games released on the PS2. Some were disappointed that the game wasn't released on the newer PS3, which had already launched, but the next game, God of War 3, found its way to the system 3 years later. The God of War series is still going strong, with a reboot continuing the story in 2018. We have an incredible guest on the show today, and it's a guy that I've gotten to know over the years, and I'm very, very happy that he's joining us. Sam Witwer is here. You've seen him in Smallville. You've seen him in Battlestar Galactica. You've played as him in Star Wars The Force Unleashed. You may have heard him in Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Clone Wars. A lot of Star Wars. This guy is living the Star Wars dream life, and he's an awesome fellow. Sam Witwer, thank you so much for joining us, my friend.
Hello, Mr. Lucas.
How are you?
Good, good. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. And it's a real thrill to have you here. You're a very personable, friendly, approachable human being. And we met, I think, at the very first, or the sort of the announcement thing that they did around Force Unleashed at Star Wars Celebration.
11 years ago or something like that.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And you struck me as just this, this young up-and-coming actor with grand ambitions. And here you were starring in this video game, and you were just really nice and cordial. And then, and you haven't stopped being that, by the way. But then we met you again at Lucas Ranch, or was it
Skywalker?
At Skywalker, for Force Unleashed 2, and I was with Scott Jones, and we were just gushing because we loved the first one so much, and you were so sweet. You were as into this opportunity that you were having as we were excited to find out more about your work.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge from birth Star Wars fan, as you know.
Yes.
So yeah, how could I not be excited about that stuff?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to get into a bunch of different things here, but I think that a big chunk of the EP crowd really wants to know about how it feels to see you, not just a character that you're voicing, but actually your face on the box with the Star Wars brand, and know that people are going to be playing you.
Very strange.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to get a hold of 12-year-old me via, the DeLorean time machine or something, if I were to talk to myself as a kid and say, hey, you're going to be involved in this stuff, I would not have believed myself. And I also, hell, if you were to contact me 11 years ago and say, you're going to keep working for Lucasfilm for the next 11 years, I would say that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Why would that happen?
Yeah.
Force Unleashed, this is great, but this is my one chance to contribute to Star Wars. And 11 years later here, I'm still working for these guys. So they've been more than fair and good to me, I should say.
Well, how does that happen, Sam? Is it a question? Well, is it a question of you? They get to know you and they see that your enthusiasm is a genuine thing, and then they say, "Well,
they have no choice but to get to know me now because I'm always on foot." I actually asked a producer at Lucasfilm, I'm like, "Why? What's the deal? Why do you keep hiring me?" Full on says, "Why is that happening?" Because I'm always bugging you guys. I'm always underfoot. I'm always wanting to know what you're doing. And she said, that's part of it right there. That you do bug us, but what we never get the feeling you're looking for the next job. We always get the feeling that you're just excited and that you don't want to be too underfoot, but you want to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that endears them to me, I suppose, I guess. But the fact that I'm truly enthusiastic about what they're doing. I will say, and this is just a theory, I haven't really heard this directly from anyone, but the fact that I honestly don't care whether they hire me or not.
Yeah.
I think that helps.
Yeah.
I know some people who really do care whether they
Right.
get hired by someone or not. And sometimes their ingratiating behavior is a little bit transparent in terms of what they're after.
Right.
And people smell that stuff, especially around the Star Wars brand. People smell that stuff. So for all the roles that I have been fortunate enough to do in Star Wars, I have been offered. People have said, "Oh, this is definitely happening. You're going to do this, or you're going to do that. You're going to do that," and I don't care.
Yeah.
It's an honor to even be considered for these things, and I love these people, and I love the people that work at the company. I love what they're doing, and a lot of those jobs didn't happen, or they went here's something that people maybe are not totally aware of, but there was a thought for a while that I was going to be Kanan in Rebels. And my final analysis on that is, my God, they got the right guy in Freddie Prinze Jr. because he was pitch perfect as that role.
Yeah.
He was absolutely and totally perfect. And I ended up benefiting because I got to make a new friend. I got to make friends with Freddie. I got to blind him. So, it's that's my theory. My theory is they know I already feel like they've done enough. That I've had enough opportunity from them. And so when I am around, I am purely just like, tell me what you're doing. I want to, what's happening? Oh, give me a rumor, blah, blah, blah. I want to know the secrets because I'm a fan, not because I'm looking for the next job.
Yeah. Is that kind of the? And by the way, Fred Wicks, who is a viewer on EP here, says that he loves you and you are a savant with Star Wars. You know more than almost anybody, and he says maybe except Pablo Hidalgo. Would you say
Right.
that you guys are kind of about even in your Star Wars knowledge?
You know, as much as I feel like I'm a Star Wars, I have some Star Wars trivia up here a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like if there was something I felt like I was good at when it came to Star Wars is knowing what the thematic intent is.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as important what spaceship is this or,
That's
you know.
what Lucas always says.
Yeah, I think it's more important to understand the spirit of it. At least it is when you're performing these things. You know, if you don't understand the spirit or the thematic intent of George Lucas, then maybe you shouldn't be, doing it.
That's awesome.
I don't know, but when it comes to the pure trivia, I would fear Pablo. I would fear him because he does this every day. I
Yes.
don't, So yeah, I would fear him, and he goes all the way back to West End Games, Star Wars role-playing game, which is where the expanded universe and all that stuff began. So I wouldn't mess.
He's the keeper of the library.
Speaking of Freddie Prinze Jr., I mean, there's a guy who doesn't know all of the trivia, but I would put him up against anyone when it came to the thematic intent of what these things are.
Right.
He's very knowledgeable. When we would be doing records for Star Wars Rebels, Taylor Gray would be next to Freddie, and the talks they would have between the takes, you may as well have just hit record because it was Ezra and Kanan and Freddie teaching Taylor about Star Wars and what this is about, what that's about. No, man, the thing about Luke Skywalker is it's not about swinging a lightsaber. He was the best Jedi because of his heart, man. It has nothing to do with that, and he starts talking about martial arts discipline and all these really interesting layers that he was bringing to his Star Wars character. And that's the stuff that's hard to get,
Yeah. Would you say that the folks that are sort of shepherding everything at Lucasfilm are, especially protective about who they bring in? And, they don't have George Lucas, and Kathleen Kennedy is doing, I think, a terrific job at sort of, creating the industry around Star Wars and the opportunities around Star Wars. But I don't know if she's as much of a shaper of concepts and ideas. And I think she helps to protect everything, but.
Well, you need all of it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been reading about recently on the internet that irritates me a little bit is when people minimize the role of, say, anyone on the crew of anything.
Yes.
Right. Or a producer. I read someone saying Kathy Kennedy's a producer. That just means she oversees and is the person who is the liaison between the studio and no, you don't know what a producer is.
Yeah.
Shut up. You don't know what she does.
Yes.
I'll put it to you this way. Take any set that I've been on. Let's say the gaffer's having a hard day.
Yeah.
Well, someone who doesn't understand how this stuff comes together might say, well, the gaffer has a hard day. Who cares? You're not going to see a quality shift on the screen. And I would say, yes, you will. You will. The gaffer has a really tough day and he's not working as fast or as efficiently. That'll be the difference between 2 takes and 3 takes in a critical scene. Mm-hmm. And that is, you will directly see a line between that guy's bad day and the quality of what you see on the screen.
Yeah.
Every person in that machine is key. And these producers, I mean, Dave Filoni can have the coolest idea in the world, but if these people can't figure out how to make that happen for him, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or it happens not very well, or so I get irritated sometimes when people underestimate the genius of Kathy Kennedy. She may not know Star Wars the way that Dave Filoni does, but this stuff doesn't get done without her.
I mean, honestly, look at all of these different incredible directions that I've been around Star Wars my whole life too, but to go to Star Wars Celebration last year and just to see all of these different tendrils and all these different ways that Star Wars is reaching us now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that even happened with George, it is a different power that's sort of pushing this out there. And Clearly there's been some disappointments with some people with Battlefront 2 and, with The Last Jedi, but still, like, the amount of ways in is incredible.
Well, the thing that people have to remember is, let me take you back to a time. You may not remember this, Victor. Maybe you weren't born yet, but I'll take you back to the 80s. Okay. Let me take you back to the 80s.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet.
No.
Let's that.
Nor was I, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway.
Okay.
Take us back to when there was just a Star Wars trilogy, right? And that's it. There was one Star Wars trilogy, and maybe George Lucas was going to make more, maybe he wasn't, but that was it. That was it. It was over, right?
Yeah.
And Star Wars kind of faded from the public consciousness a little bit, but the people that held on to it, people like me, people like you, we would compare ourselves to things like Star Trek, and we would have kind of a superior attitude when Star Trek would make a misstep, when there would be a not great Star Trek movie or a handful of episodes that kind of sucked. And we go, yeah, whatever, man. See, that's Star Trek. Star Wars is better than that. But what you don't understand is creating something new that isn't just a rehash of what you've seen before is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
It's so hard, right? And creating it under a different time, a different environment, different technological constraints, different concerns, everything being different. And then to create a new story and a new world and all these things. Ultimately, what happens is it's a numbers game, right? If you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, which was essentially, Gene Roddenberry's second turn at bat, well, third if you count the fact that his involvement in Star Trek, the motion picture, was considered to be kind of a failure. And they took Star Trek away from him. Yeah. They gave it to Harvey Bennett, and then Harvey Bennett made Wrath of Khan and blah, blah, blah. So Roddenberry, the creator, was no longer in the driver's seat. But then they decided, hey, we're going to make Star Trek The Next Generation, and they put Roddenberry back in the driver's seat. Well, watch season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not a great show. But the thing is, without season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation, you don't get season 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. Like when the show was mind-bogglingly great.
Yeah.
You watch that show now and you're like, this is impressive stuff. And if you didn't have Star Trek The Next Generation, you don't get Deep Space Nine, which also had its early not great seasons, but became a brilliant show, and so on and so forth. Like you take the bad with the good eventually is what I'm saying, is that it becomes a numbers game. And so long as there's more good stuff than bad stuff, you're winning. It's like,
absolutely.
And so with the Star Wars movies, people were all, when the prequels came out and there were, moments of maybe the execution not being up to snuff, people were like, I can't believe this. And they were acting like the world was coming to an end. Whereas anyone that understands the reality of how these things are made goes, of course, let's just be patient. And there will be things we like and things we don't like. And that's basically, where we're at. When you make so much of this stuff, you may not love it all, but there might be something coming over the horizon that will blow your mind.
Yes.
And that's how it works these days, especially, Star Wars before the Disney thing was an independent production, and George Lucas was at the center of that. It was 6 movies and a TV show, and it was all from him. And so that's a very personal story. Right now, other people are getting involved, and they're telling their own personal stories that mean something to them.
Yeah.
So you can't totally expect it to line up entirely thematically with what George was trying to do. Yeah. Ideally, you want it to, but I don't know if that's terribly realistic. So that's a very long answer to it.
Clearly we think about this, like you think about it, I'm thinking about it. And do you think that, Lucas had such a reign over Star Wars as a singular kind of entity, and so the buck stopped with him, right? Do you think we're going to get to that again with Star Wars, or are there too many people is it like a council now that's so...
I think it's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing. It's, in the same way that an independent movie is a different animal than a studio movie.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Because George Lucas, beyond the very first Star Wars Episode 4, that was a studio movie. And then every other Star Wars movie or product afterward has been an independent production.
Yeah. Are you...
You're just going to get a different, you know what I mean? And it was a very personal thing for him.
Yes.
So even the stories in the Clone Wars were him expressing interesting and ideas that he found interesting through the medium of animation.
And honestly, like looking back at them now and seeing the choices and his decisions, I didn't like all of those movies or all of those choices, but I like that he made those choices. I like
You
that,
like the integrity
yeah,
of it. You like,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there was a hell of a lot of integrity to what he was doing, yes.
Yeah, he was driven to build all of that stuff. Now,
Well, you know what's interesting is if you watch Clone Wars, it's like Jet Lucas said to me, he said, you want to know why the Clone Wars is so good? Among a lot of reasons. And I'm like, what's one of the reasons? And he goes, because it's Star Wars made by a guy who's sick of Star Wars.
Cool.
And I was like, whoa, that's exactly what I thought was happening there.
Yeah.
Because George was clearly trying things, and sometimes you have an episode about, poison Snapple on Mandalore and the kids are getting sick because they're drinking bad Snapple.
Yeah.
Mugen tea, I think it was called. And then other episodes, Yoda is exploring the Sith homeworld and finding the secrets of the Force with all kinds of weird, whacked out stuff. And it can't be understated how you're just never, ever going to get to anything brilliant unless you're taking tremendous risks.
Absolutely.
And George always took risks. Dave Filoni said to me, George's Padawan himself, he said, people don't understand what great ideas from George even look like. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Yeah. He says, well, because this was hilarious because it was a conversation me and some friends were having recently. And Dave just solidified the ideas perfectly because he said, listen, George will give you an idea. And sometimes that idea, you're like, wow, that's brilliant. And a lot of times you're going to hear the idea and you're going to go, I don't see how that works. I don't think that that's a good idea. Yeah. Then you have to realize the reason you don't think it's a good idea is because you've never seen it before.
Yeah.
That's why you're not sure it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because you can't relate it to anything. And you go, I don't understand. But where does Anakin come in? And then, but this and that, no, that's over here. This is a completely different thing over here.
Yeah.
And what he said is it makes you have to sit down and do the work and make that idea into something amazing that someone else is going to imitate later, right? Yeah. Like there are certain ideas people can come up with for Star Wars, but the reason people are like, oh my God, that's brilliant, is because we've seen it before.
Yeah.
They're riffing on something that already has emotional resonance. So
that is a big problem in Star Wars, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the I think the diehards out there, it's something that we kind of glom onto and we appreciate the feelings it brings up, but we also intellectually understand that, hey, we've done this before. That was one of the biggest complaints about The Force Awakens, which I love that movie because it brings up those emotions so purely. I thought that JJ had a really tough task to kind of bring people sort of back to Star Wars, and that's exactly what he did with that movie. But yes, I can fully understand the criticisms that it's reflecting a lot of things that look familiar for us.
Yeah, well, and again, there is nothing wrong with enjoying that movie and thinking it's great. And it surely had a lot of energy. The execution was fantastic. The performances were wonderful. The cast was great. The ideas behind it were not perhaps the most original.
Yeah.
But again, that was George's strong suit.
Yeah.
Just putting up things on the screen that you've never seen before.
Yeah, it drives me crazy when I see people dogging George Lucas, man. That guy.
Oh,
I mean, the guy. We cut stuff in nonlinear editing systems because he was thinking like that. I'm
recording on a Pro Tools system because he developed Edit Droid.
Yeah.
For God's sakes.
Yeah.
He
saw all the deficiencies, all the deficiencies, all the things that needed to get done and could get done. And he basically put the people together to do all of these things that revolutionized everything, all of it.
But it's this way. Days gone, where the way we shoot stuff, and that's tech that I saw demonstrated at at Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic. I saw that tech demonstrated 10 years ago.
It's awesome.
Like the stuff that we're using. I'm like, well, this is familiar. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's the thing about Lucas. I mean, let's talk about the prequels for a second.
Yeah.
Boy, it's if I were to be critical, I'd say not every scene was executed with the amount of skill that perhaps it was executed with in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to be glowing about it, there ain't any other movies like those movies.
No.
These things are singular creations from a guy who is dreaming up some crazy stuff. And when you talk about the world building, I mean, it's funny. I have a very, very close friend named Glenn Howerton, who was Dennis on Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's also one of the creators of that show and writers of that show. And he said, after watching Force Awakens, he said, "Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I'll tell you something. I would much rather see another prequel by George Lucas than see that movie." I'm like, interesting. He's like, "Yeah, I'm discovering I'm more of a fan of George Lucas than I thought I was, because I never, ever could tell you where those movies were going. Even though I knew Anakin was going to become Darth Vader, I was the world building and creating a giant, large galaxy of things and people and ideas and concepts." And he also said just the story itself, the betrayal and the political machinations and how this world goes from a democracy to a dictatorship. He's like, it was just not what I expected from a bunch of Star Wars movies.
Right.
And I found that was he's like, I would much rather have someone trying to create something new than to see something that I've already seen before, because I can always go and just watch that movie if I want that feeling again. I can go and give me something new that expands my understanding of the other stuff rather than contracts everything.
But you're also in the trenches with the people that are building something new against the constraints of the sort of commercialization of all of these properties and the theme park kind of building that's happening around all of this stuff. You see them really working hard to create things that shatter expectations and build on new lore and give us something wonderful to sort of sink our teeth into. Are you?
Yeah.
Do you think you're too close, to these folks, and can you still be a fan and be critical
Yeah, I can. Well, I think I've been probably more critical than is just now.
Yeah.
than perhaps I should be, being someone who keeps getting employed by them. But I mean, here's the thing: it's home team.
Yeah.
Am I say the biggest fan of the movie The Last Jedi? No. Yeah. But am I pleased when people say they love it and that it means something to them? Yeah. Absolutely. Why would let's take it from instead of a micro point of view, let's take it from a macro point of view. Life is tough and bad things happen in real life. And as someone who works in entertainment, anytime a successful product gets put out that means something to people, I feel like we all win. Yeah. So I don't understand the vitriol, like the fans fighting each other.
Oh, it's
debating
awful.
Is one thing.
Yes.
Debating is fine.
Yes.
But people shaming each other, shut up.
Yeah.
No.
Or
don't
targeting
call people
creatives with their hate too, which is just awful too. I mean, Twitter's incredible and YouTube comments, all that stuff is amazing. But if it's all just being used to just generate hate, it's awful.
Well, it's the whole thing with that is that people they're not giving a second thought to what it is that they're putting out in the world. They're not taking a breath and thinking about the fact that the receiving end of whatever it is you're putting out are also other people.
Yeah.
That sucks. That really sucks. It's I think anyone who says, "Oh, people who like Last Jedi are not real fans," oh, go to hell. Yeah. And people who say, "Oh, if you don't like Last Jedi, you're sexist." No, shut up.
Yeah.
Everyone just shut up.
Yeah.
Please, can we just shut up?
Yeah.
Debate it. Please debate it.
Yeah.
Debate what you liked, that's fine. But the moment you start getting personal and insulting people, you really don't deserve to call yourself a fan of this franchise, which is it's a franchise that's based around the singular idea of don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Star Wars is about?
Absolutely.
So if you're kind of aggressing on people, you've missed the whole point.
Yeah.
Then you know what that means? That means you like these movies because of explosions and spaceships and stuff and fighting. You don't like the movies for the reason that George Lucas liked the movies. Yes. If you're that kind of person.
Yes. About their idea of including galaxies of characters.
Yeah. You're not a real fan if you're not making an effort to be nice to people. I just said it. I'm flaming. Bring it on. Come on.
It's so true, man. That's the Jedi way. Can we talk Last Jedi for a second? You're actually in the movie. You're one of the voices in the movie. Who did you play in the film?
I don't even. What they need sometimes is they need people to people who know how to make Star Wars sounds and languages and all kinds of stuff, and the way that Lucasfilm feels about it is who better than the people who've worked on the animated series to voice characters and stuff like that. And I've only seen the movie twice, so I kind of don't recall who I did or what I did.
What were your thoughts on this movie? What did you think of Jedi?
Well, okay, I'm going to try to be as honest but also diplomatic as possible. I think that there were wonderful performances in there. I think that Rian Johnson made the movie that he wanted to make. I think he said what he wanted to say with it. And I think that things like representation and putting people on the screen who, it's like when you hear about people who saw Cassian Andor in Rogue One and felt like, my God, I've never seen myself as a Star Wars. That's all very important, and you can't understate that. I think as you and I being white males, we've had the luxury our entire lives of seeing ourselves on the screen, and to the point where we don't even think about it. So, there are probably a bunch of people who go, I don't get this all representation thing. Be like, yeah, well, you have the luxury of not getting it.
You're not supposed to really get it.
So, but if I'm going to say just from my point of view, then the truths that we cling to depend greatly on your own point of view. Why I did that as Palpatine? I've got the character wrong. My point of view is when you take a beloved character from anything, and you've seen the character grow up, you've grown up with the character, the character, we have opinions about the character, then there's been books written about the character and comic books and all that stuff. If you fundamentally change that character between stories, if you fundamentally change that character off screen, then at that point you invite people to disagree with you.
Yeah.
You have invited that into your house at that point if you're the filmmaker. Some people will agree with you. And it depends on what the audience is bringing to the table. There are people that I've talked to who needed to see that version of Luke Skywalker in their life. They'd be like, I was Luke Skywalker growing up. Now I'm older and I'm still facing major challenges. So I needed that. Perfectly legitimate. But you know what also is legitimate? People who say, this is the guy who saved Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Darth Vader, like saving Kylo Ren is child's play next to saving Darth Vader.
Yeah.
The first few times that I've faced real challenges in my life and overcame them, it made it 2 to 3 times more likely that I was going to fight way harder next time a challenge came up. Because I was like, look, everyone relax. We've seen this kind of thing before. Let's roll up our sleeves and let's not give up.
Yeah.
And I always felt that Luke Skywalker was
the epitome of not giving up.
Yeah. So I did not necessarily agree with that version of the character.
Yeah.
I was like, that's just Han Solo. We saw his cynicism. So can you make me believe off screen that Han Solo becomes a guy who would run away? Actually, yeah. I can kind of wrap my brain around that.
Yeah.
That's not as much of a leap. But Luke Skywalker, the George Lucas movies, the long independent film that he made.
Yeah.
Last thing we saw was a guy who had the level of compassion that it would take to throw down his weapon in front of his mortal enemy and declare, I'm not going to fight anyone.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hurt anyone. And I'm certainly not going to hurt this man, my father. You failed, because this is what a Jedi is.
Yeah.
I am a man of peace. That guy doesn't ever for a moment think about murdering his best friend and his sister's kid.
Yeah.
He doesn't think for a moment. And furthermore, if he did mess up, he's probably going to force Skype that guy until he answers the phone and say, hey, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So we've learned about Skype. So that's
which is also kind of reflected in the fact that Kylo doesn't really sort of present his true menace either. Like he is a guy that still seems to
have a lot of conflict.
Yeah, conflict internally, exactly.
By the time we're with Vader in episodes 4, 5, and 6, he seems pretty not conflicted.
Yeah.
He seems pretty much like, I'm Darth Vader,
Yes.
okay, that's it.
Yeah.
And Luke's like, I don't think you are. He's like, okay, but I'm Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And Luke's like, I don't think you are. And then Kylo Ren, who's like, I don't know who I am. And Luke's like, yeah, man, he's lost. I don't know. I got to go and hang out. I've got to find the first Jedi temple so I can hang out and die.
Yeah. Sam,
What?
the movie's hitting the movie's home video. It's like imminently, and I know you're going to get it. You're going to watch it again. Will you come back and we can just dissect? Maybe we'll put David Collins or maybe somebody else into this mix as well. But let's just get into it because I feel we could do like a 2-hour talk about The Last Jedi and maybe we have somebody come on that just loves every second of it and we can have a real discussion around it. I think it'd be amazing.
That's possible, so long as, like I said, so long as it's not contentious. Because the fact of the matter is that if you want that version of Luke Skywalker,
yeah,
it's pretty much as good as it gets, right?
Yes.
Mark Hamill's performance, the way that was presented, all of that stuff. It's like, if that's the version you want,
yeah,
it's a very, very good
well,
version.
And I will say,
work.
there's a ton to love about The Last Jedi as well. Like, there's lots. I'm right there with you. I know people are going to want to know about Days Gone, and we just reported on the delay. Should people be nervous about this game having a delay to 2019?
Nope, because I happen to know exactly what's happening, and I can't tell you. But it ain't anything to be nervous about. I'm happy to say.
Awesome. Sony had a remarkable E3 in 2016. I think we saw you then and put you in or 2015 or 2016. We had you on camera talking about Days Gone. It was crazy because I didn't know that you were the guy in that game, and I think I saw you outside of the screening area, and we went in, and then it's like, that's Sam. He's the guy again.
He's doing it again. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm ridiculously fortunate that I'm in another project that is choosing to use my likeness and my face. And in terms of the mocap technology, it's certainly come a long way since Force Unleashed. I mean, the stuff that I've seen, there are, and this is running on a PlayStation 4, mind you, with PlayStation 4 hardware. I've seen shots that I was like, that could have just been shot with a film camera. In terms of having seen my own work before and knowing what my face does and little quirks that I have, it's all there in the character, which I was just astounded that they could do that with a PS4 game model. I was shocked.
That is awesome.
Shocked.
That is awesome.
So yeah, they're doing some really fantastic work, and it's one of the strange things for me is by the time this thing gets released, it'll be a character that I will have been playing for almost 4 years. That's weird to me. It'd be like, I've been playing this guy now for a long time, and I know him very well, and no one's seen him yet.
Yeah.
So I hope I'm doing the right thing, because there surely isn't any time to course correct. And we're still, by the way, we're putting some finishing touches on stuff.
Yeah, you're still a year away from shipping this thing. Is the work the same as it was on the Force Unleashed?
It's different because Force Unleashed, we did a lot of video reference, and then the mocap portion of that was basically facial and performance capture. Yeah. This, the way we're doing it is I'm in a mocap suit. My face is dotted up. I'm wearing a helmet with the camera pointed at my face, and we're recording audio, and we have all the actors on a virtual set. We didn't have that technology back in the day. Yeah. So it's about as lived in as it can be. And I'm very proud of what they're pulling off, and I'm trying to figure out what I can say without getting Sony angry at me.
Well, what's cool is that because their E3 in 2016 was ridiculous. I don't know if you could see that. I know you're a huge gamer, but it was just like they had that showcase night, and Corey came out and talked about God of War. Actually, they didn't even talk about it. They just played all of these things, but none of those games, like Detroit Become Human and God of War and Last of Us 2, like all these things that were teased, they didn't come out at all last year. Last year was a fairly quiet year for Sony, but now the hammer's about to drop, and we've got God of War coming out, and Detroit Become Human. How's that feel?
And here's the thing: what I've never experienced a situation where I've been making a game with a Sony run developer.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
It is so different. Like, for one thing, they want these all to be AAA titles, right?
Yeah.
But for another thing, they will not compete with themselves.
Yeah.
So you go, oh, so we all have our defined area that we get to release and not worry about, these giant titles coming to compete with us.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about. Okay, great. But furthermore, Sony's main focus is to make as good of a game as it can possibly make, because when you have a developer that works under Sony, the priority is to move Sony PlayStations, to make games that are so good that people go, well, I have to get a PlayStation because I have to play that.
Yeah.
So the resources and the eye toward quality that they have is really extraordinary. I mean, I will say this about Days Gone. A lot of games that I've seen in development, they start out with like a scope of like this. It's like, oh my God, we're going to make a game and it's going to be this huge. It's huge. And then as time goes on, you don't get to finish everything. You have limited resources. Certain things don't work as fast as you'd want them to. And so then it shrinks to about that, right? If you're lucky. And if the scope was big enough, like say, here's something. Force Unleashed, giant scope. But then you can finish what you can finish.
Yeah.
So that gets cut down.
Yeah.
But the Force Unleashed, the story was so epic and the scope was so big to begin with that the cut down version was still felt suitably epic. When we went to work on Force Unleashed 2, we had 9 months to make a game. Yeah. And so the original doc on how that game was going to play out was actually just big enough. But then it gets shrunk down and it's not big enough.
Yep.
Right?
I remember my broken heart very well.
Yeah. It's if you knew what all that we wanted to do, it would have been we would have squeaked by, right? Days Gone is the first time that I've been in a situation where it's like the scope is like this, and then as the game goes on, the years wear on, the scope goes like this and like this and like this and gets bigger and bigger, and they make it work too. It's one thing to be reaching for new things, new gameplay elements and new mechanics and bigger this, bigger that. It's one thing to reach for that, but it's another thing to actually get your hands on those concepts and make them work. So,
I mean, it's apparent when you play the PlayStation stuff that there is this effort to, just excel to a point that we haven't seen before on a kind of repeat basis. Like
that's what they're trying to do. They're spending unknown amounts of money to make the best game that they could possibly make. Yeah. And so when people are like, oh man, the Days Gone has been pushed back, is that a problem? And I sit there laughing. I go, no, no.
Yeah. I've been a fan of that Bend studio forever, man. Like their PSP stuff was incredible. Like they were always making things that were way better than they should be. Like they made the Uncharted Golden Abyss game for the Vita, and it's like, well, that's an Uncharted game, they actually made that.
If I could tell you I don't know that I'm at liberty to tell anyone the origins of Days Gone, but it even in the beginning started as like this and got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Hell, my situation was I was contracted for this I will tell because screw it. Yeah. I was contracted for a 10-day shoot.
Okay. 4 years later.
It's been 3.5 years. 10-day shoot, guys.
That's amazing.
Like, we'll get it all done. And suddenly, no, the story's getting bigger and it's getting bigger and more elements are added to it and the world is getting bigger. And I just have never seen that. I've never seen when I first started working on Days Gone, I was pretty grumpy. Yeah. And you could ask the people I worked with. I was notably grumpy because I'm not someone who does well when I don't know what we're going for.
Right.
It puts me in a bad mood, especially if it's my face that's going to be up there. I'm very unhappy when, for example, someone doesn't give me a full script or certain things keep changing and they don't seem to know what they want.
Well, I think there's a reason, like you were the guy associated with Force Unleashed 2. And I know that like that was a cool game. It was the beginning of an awesome game. But you probably heard more than anybody the disappointment.
Not fun.
Yeah. And so you're the guy that people would like, well, I like that your game was like half made. And you're the guy they're talking to. Yeah.
Well, especially when like the gameplay mechanics were refined, but then they just didn't have time to build content.
Yeah.
And there's a whole political reason for that.
I totally understand, dude. Like you are, when you're out front and center, you're the face guy, and people are going to come at you, man. Yeah.
Well, whether it's a TV show, whether it's anything, if my face has to be up there, if I feel like people aren't quite doing their jobs, I get really moody. Now, one thing I didn't understand with Days Gone was the process that sometimes happens with these Sony studios, or in fact, the process that Bend was foreseeing. There was a complete miscommunication between me and management, in terms of what we were doing. So we would reshoot a scene like 3 times, and I would honestly get moodier every time, because I'm like, why are we doing this 3 times? We should have just done it once and done it right.
Yeah.
What I didn't understand was that this was an iterative process, that everything was in flux. The tone of the game was in flux. The tone of the character was in flux. The story points were shifting a little bit, and that 6 months down the road, something very major might have changed, and we might maybe reshoot certain things and add certain things. And once I wrapped my brain around that, this got easier. And then suddenly, when things started solidifying, right? Yeah. Like a year into the process, you started figuring out we weren't reshooting as much anymore. Mm-hmm. And we kept shooting new stuff and things that shaded in this area of the world better, or things that told this story point more vividly, and that's when you start getting excited and you realize, oh, this is just a big mound of clay that they keep shaping and reshaping, because they have the luxury of doing that until it's good.
That's amazing.
Right? Force Unleashed 1, we had a script from beginning to end. In the beginning, we knew what we were going for, and I feel like we hit the mark on Force Unleashed, the first one. This one, yeah, people didn't quite know. And they would go and they would review with Sony, and they would come back, and then the character would change, and I would have to play Deacon differently, and I would do all these things. But what I didn't get was they were prepared for that, and suddenly, next thing I know, a 10-day contract turns into 3.5 years of very fun work. Well, I've come to really respect the people that have been working on this, and I have to admit, I didn't always have that respect, because I didn't get what was happening, and it's not how I'm used to working.
I get it. And we're going to get to play it at E3, and I can't wait to do that. But your career is incredible, dude, because you seem as comfortable being a video game hero that we can control, or doing animation stuff, or doing background audio for a movie, or headlining your own TV show. I want to talk about TV for just a second, then we'll let you go, because I know you got other things to do. We're in this era where TV shows never die anymore, and I know that you guys made a tremendous amount of fans of Being Human. And you were also on Smallville, which I love that show and miss that show, and you're also on Battlestar Galactica. Have you heard anything about any of these former shows? Are they percolating? Is Netflix surrounding any concepts here? Or are you being, poked or prodded by executives about doing something like that again?
You mean about doing a show, or doing a revival, or
yeah,
what?
One of the we have some reboot news is happening almost every single day. There's a new reboot of something, or a revival of something, or an extra season of something, and some of these shows feel like they would be perfect for continuing on.
Yeah, I would say that if I knew anything about a revival or reboot of any of these things, I would not be at liberty to say on your show. Yeah. But having said that, I'm always happy when I hear on social media or Twitter or something like that people have discovered Being Human for the first time, because I feel like we did a lot of really good work there. And what was fun about that show, it felt more like an independent shoot than it felt like a TV show that was on TV. It felt like we were just making our own thing, because we were underfunded and understaffed, but the people that were there were extraordinarily good at what they did. I thought our writers were utterly, insanely creative and wonderful, and the crew were a bunch of badasses who could make something out of nothing.
It feels like that's the way that Being Human should have been made in some way.
Well, yeah, the show would not have felt as good if it wasn't made that way, because it needed to feel rough around the edges, and it's a small show about people living in an apartment together who happen to be a vampire, or a werewolf, and a ghost. But and so we tried to give as much truth to that ridiculous premise as possible, and enjoy the fact that the premise was ridiculous. And I look back very fondly on that experience. It's interesting, these television gigs. series regular gigs on television are like among the most sought after jobs on the planet, right? You know, like no one gets them. And then if you get them, you're one of the luckiest bastards ever.
Yep.
But I will say this, is as lucky as you are, if you have a job like that, the quality of life isn't exactly the best because you're just doing that. You're only doing that. Yeah. I remember being in Montreal and asking a very rudimentary question about where a certain restaurant was. And some Montreal local made fun of me. They're like, "You've been here for like 3 years. You don't know what so-and-so is." Yeah. And to which I responded very pointedly. I said, when would I have time to learn the city? No, explain to me. When am I going to have time to look around the city? Yeah. Because all I do is work. Yeah. That's all I do. And the other part is that I was in Montreal and I wasn't home. Now, having said that, Montreal is amazing. And if I have to spend years away from home, it may as well be someplace like Montreal. But, awesome. You know, the work that I've been doing recently has been stuff that has allowed me to live in my actual home for a while, which is, you know, and then dogs show up and then I get to live with dogs. And, you know, these are like things that I don't know. It sounds kind of funny, but like, you know, as an American, my American dream included living in a house and having a dog. And now I live in a house and I have 2 dogs.
And it's so funny that American dream doesn't always jibe with the actor's dream, right? Because you have to be a vagabond, don't you? You kind of have to go where the work is.
And I've been less a vagabond in the last 3 years than I ever have in the entire history of my working. And jobs like Days Gone have allowed me to do that because I've had a steady gig for 3.5 years. That's great. And it shoots here in the city.
Well,
So I'm just like, well, oh my God, is this what it was like to be in the 80s and be on the A-Team? Yeah. This is incredible. Like, I am Dwight Schultz. I'm Howling Mad Murder. I'm Dirk Benedict. Damn it.
Well, you're like, you know, actually with that game, you're one of the dudes on The Walking Dead, but you're not in Atlanta. So,
right. Well, and again, some of those people being friends, it's like, it's not easy to be away from your family. Now, I don't have a family, but I do have dogs. So I've told my management, I'm like, I'm not the same guy. Yeah. I'm not, if there's an amazing opportunity, then yes, we'll talk about it. But I'm not as interested in leaving town for 5, 6, 8 months at a time. My life has changed. And what I'm more interested in doing now is kind of, you know, like a lot more personal stuff, writing some stuff with Glenn Howerton that people are paying us for, making this D&D book with my brother and John Peterson and director Kyle Newman. That allows me to stay here. Doing this Crash Tones album allows me to stay here. Days Gone allows me to stay here. So I've made a conscious decision to have a little bit more of a quality life recently.
Well, let me ask you this, and it's a very important question, Sam. Does Jon Favreau have your phone number?
I cut his head off. He's a little sore at me. I took his sword. I will tell you that I don't know that he has my phone number or anything like that, but I've bumped into the guy. Yeah. And we made some pre-Vizsla Darth Maul jokes at each other. That was nice.
Awesome.
But yeah, congratulations to him. What a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know, he's running the new Star Wars live-action TV show with the Disney and Lucasfilm streaming Star Wars programming that's coming to the new Disney streaming app next year.
Look, I'll admit to knowing a little bit more than I'm pretending to right now, but I will also admit to not knowing any more than what I know, which is very little. Okay. But I know some stuff. But I know a little stuff. But it's not much stuff. It's not very impressive. But look, I will say this. After 11 years of working with Lucasfilm, you no longer hear rumors. Any rumor that gets back to you is actually absolutely 100% the truth. Wow. So you don't hear a lot of stuff. But the stuff you hear ends up being true. And the only reason you hear it is because you have a history of not telling anyone.
That's crazy.
So I am not. I have no influence. I don't necessarily have any like major equity, but I have equity with the people who are over there making this wonderful stuff. I am so happy that The Last Jedi was successful, and Rogue One, and Force Awakens, and the Rebels finale went off extremely well. Yeah. People seem to be absolutely and totally thrilled with the entirety of that project, which is immensely gratifying, since the way I think about those guys are home team.
Yeah.
Those are my friends. I want them to win, and they are winning. So that's good.
That is awesome. I love to hear you say that. Sam, I want you back on the show as soon as you're able to and willing to. I think it'd be incredible to dive into Last Jedi. And by that point, I'll have been a little bit more caught up on Rebels, and we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, well, speaking of taking risks with the franchises, you're going to see some things that, speaking of ideas, that, the whole thing of like, you don't know a good idea until you do the work on it to make it a good idea, to do something. Filoni has done stuff at the end of this show that has never been done with Star Wars before. And if you had told me, oh, he's going to do this, I'd say, don't. It's a bad idea. And he pulls it off. That's awesome. He makes it actually really work. And that's the strength of that guy in particular. Dave Filoni has absolutely earned the spot that he has at that company. And I'm so very excited to see what he does next, because, I mean, not only is he a friend of mine, but even if he weren't, I would be such a huge fan of that guy.
Yeah. Truly an incredible creator.
I take the opportunity to make fun of him in these interviews, but I'm just going to say, I mean, he's been able to achieve at that company. He's been able to tell stories that shouldn't work, but do. And suddenly when they do, you have a brand new element, a brand new dimension of Star Wars to look at and go down the imaginative rabbit hole and think about. So
awesome. You are a fascinating gentleman to talk with, man. It's awesome to talk with somebody that's as passionate about all this stuff as I am. And I can't wait to have you back, and we will dive in a little bit more on some of the Star Wars news that's out there. Thank you, Sam. We'll see you soon, my friend. Have a great day.
Thanks.
And right now, we're going to throw it to my review of Thor Ragnarok on 4K Blu-ray. Last night was a good night to be at my place because we watched Thor Ragnarok on 4K Blu-ray, and man, did this movie explode off of the screen. I've reviewed this movie already. I reviewed it with Johnny on Film Fury, so if you'd like to recap on that, if you haven't seen this flick, you should definitely check out that review. I will say that on second viewing, a lot more details come through. You can hear the jokes, first of all, because there's a lot of laughter throughout this movie, because there's lots of funny lines.
He's a friend from work.
Taika Waititi famously decided to opt to make it kind of a buddy comedy with Thor and Hulk. Spoiler alert. And so we get a lot of quips, a lot of back and forth. Jeff Goldblum is in this movie as well as the Grand Master, and he is hilarious. Just his finger movements and his pauses. And yeah, do whatever. He's just so cool. And he's amazing as this character. And he had free reign. And what was interesting, because there's deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, is that you get a chance to kind of see how much further they went with Goldblum. And I gotta say that Taika Waititi cut the right stuff. Not that the deleted stuff was bad, but it was almost a little too much, and he knew it. And very smart. So you're left wanting more Goldblum.
Here we go. Here we go.
Hats off to Chris Hemsworth for coming back to this role and kicking ass as Thor. I'm a big fan of Thor 1 and Thor 2. I like the more serious tone that the movies have gone in the past. I love this sort of cosmic Marvel universe that was set up with Asgard and, you know, Thor fighting ice giants and rock giants and all. I loved all of that stuff. I always thought it was just a crazy idea to put Thor on the big screen, and they really pulled it off, I thought, with the first two movies. And I also think that it was the right choice to mix it up. Anybody that's read superhero comic books as long as I have knows that the creators like to kind of flip the table and try something brand new. There are lots of places throughout the DC and Marvel timelines where we do get this crazy, you know, comedy kind of vibe out of the stories. And there's lots of books that you can point to. And I think that's one of the main criticisms that people have about Thor Ragnarok, is that it is too jokey and too funny, and the repartee between Hulk and Thor just gets a little too, you know, like petulant little brothers or something like that. And I can see the reasoning behind those criticisms, absolutely. But I think you can also counterbalance that with the fact that Taika Waititi and his whole Marvel team made a huge homage to Jack Kirby and all of his creations in Sakaar, in the city that we get to run around with with Hulk and Thor. It just looks incredible, and all the costumes, all of these sort of, you know, geometric shapes on people, and there's like fuzzy creatures just sort of walking around in the background that are all sort of spray painted, and it looks insane, but it looks like comic panels, and I think that's incredible. And also, that fight between Thor and Hulk is something that you can watch forever. It is so entertaining, it's so cool, so much carnage, and you know, they both come off, you know, exceptionally well in the battle. It's really, really well handled. I loved all of that stuff. There's actually a tremendous amount of action in here. I also thought Cate Blanchett was a perfect villain as Hela. I thought she was really, really sweet in this thing. Her costume is cool. Her helmet is, you know, transforming before our eyes. It was weird to see how much they had to green screen all of that. Like they actually couldn't build her a real helmet. She was, you know, walking around with you know, the motion capture balls on her head, and then they had to put all of that stuff on there. Obviously, there's lots of CG effects in here.
You have no idea what's possible.
The visuals coming off of the 4K screen were like paintings, you know. It was like I wanted to just take that frame and hang it, you know. So beautiful. I love the Taika Waititi commentary on this. It's almost worth picking up the either the Blu-ray or the 4K Blu-ray for this, because he's hilarious. He's like singing over the Marvel theme song. He's poking fun at himself, saying that he plays every single character in the movie, and then he does play Korg, this rock creature. And seeing him in costume and sort of directing people in his Korg costume, which is just the mocap suit, is hilarious, and him talking about it is amazing. I like the featurettes as well. They're very much sort of news magazine-y, and everybody loves everybody. You don't really ever see any turmoil or strife, and I think maybe that was mostly true. I think Taika Waititi really wanted to keep this a loose and fun set. People are having fun and they're improvising, even though great expense was, you know, put forward to make this thing look like this. But it looks like they had fun making this, and it is super fun to watch, and that isn't always the case, as you know. There's also another great little short video on here, and this could have been a 2-hour movie unto itself, but they delve into the 10-year history of the MCU, and there's also a quick shot of everybody collecting on the stage to take that now famous portrait of all of the Marvel cast members together and the crew members together. This is an incredible story, this whole MCU story, and Thor Ragnarok elegantly fits right into the collective. It's a terrific movie, and it's an amazing 4K Blu-ray. It gets a 9 out of 10 from me. Thor Ragnarok is incredible. I think a lot of you already know that. And of course, as I watched this movie, I was thinking to myself, this is a great time to talk about my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. I actually tweeted out about it a couple of days ago, and I got a lot of responses. Lots of people out there were talking about it. I've got Guts saying Avengers. I said, what is the best Marvel movie? And Guts, Corey A. Walsh says Avengers, done. I've got David Poole saying Winter Soldier has the best balance of action, character development, humor, and drama, easily the most award-worthy. We've got Iron Man, Cap, First Avenger, so 2 of them from Brooks, Vancouver Brooks. And Christian DeVos says Captain America Winter Soldier. Got a lot of votes for Captain America Winter Soldier. Lots of non-MCU titles came up in what was the best Marvel movie. Spider-Man 2 was a big one. A lot of people said Logan, and also a lot of people said Blade, which was interesting. Marvel's The Avengers from Jay Bear. It's Jason Murphy saying Marvel's The Avengers is highest grossing movie at $623 million. That's a good, you know, some good analysis right there. Emily B says, personally, Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think it's up to whoever answers the question, which is absolutely correct. And then I thought, okay, well, I've never really done this on the show. I've certainly talked about my love for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I've had a great time with a lot of these movies. Why don't I take you down my pecking order, my list of things that I like? And we're going to start with number 18, which is The Incredible Hulk. Not the rundown. We're done with that. We're going to talk about The Incredible Hulk. Let's see if I can get this up on the screen here for you. This was the Edward Norton movie. And it was super fun. It had some really nice pacing, a lot of great action. I think it was Louis Leterrier who directed this thing, and it had a kind of a B-movie, sort of monster movie kind of charm to it. And it was fun. Tim Roth was the bad guy. Super good pacing. Super. It was super enjoyable. I would give this movie even today about an 8. You know, it was still solid, and it created a need for more Hulk action, which I think is still kind of yet to be satisfied. I think we really need a brand new standalone Hulk experience. That would be great. And it's too bad Edward Norton must have pissed some people off because he never got to play Bruce Banner again. My second choice at number 17 is Thor: The Dark World. I know a lot of people, like Scott Jones, have issues with this movie because it is a bit nonsensical. I will give it that. But it's, you know, it mixed science fiction with Norse mythology, and it had these really cool spaceships. The enemy was a little bit sort of weird and you know, amorphous. You don't really get a real sense of menace or identity about who the main bad guy is. But it was still really beautiful. It was a spectacle, and I had a really, really fun time with it. Natalie Portman has yet to be seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, since this movie. But, you know, she had some fun with it. I thought Loki was solid in this thing, and Chris Hemsworth is always good as Thor. But I think the thing that really knocked me out, and I actually liked all of Thor's friends in this movie too. They were all really solid, like Lady Sif, and you know, it was a good time. But the thing that knocked me out was all of these incredible sci-fi pieces coming in. It really was a cosmic experience. So that's number 17. I would also give this movie about an 8, as it's sort of gone through the test of time there. Number 16, I'm going to give it to Iron Man 2. And this one holds a special place in my heart because of Whiplash. I always thought that Mickey Rourke was hamming it up and having kind of a cheesy good time with this character. Sam Rockwell's in there as another arms guy that's trying to compete with Tony Stark, and he was solid. Scarlett Johansson made her, I think, first appearance as Black Widow, and she kicks serious ass. It was fun. The end of the film was a little abrupt and a little anticlimactic after all of this work to kind of embellish this universe and build us, something really cool and solid. But, you know, Robert Downey Jr., perfect casting. And Mickey Rourke as Whiplash is super fun. I searched forever to find a Mickey Rourke Whiplash Hot Toys figure. They were so expensive after they stopped making them. But I found one, a secondhand one in Tokyo when I was out there one year, and it's one of my favorite figures. So go figure. I really liked Iron Man 2. I would give that also an 8. I've got it, which is amazing. I'm going to talk about 18 movies as quickly as I can here, and they start really at around an 8 and they go up to a 10, which is insanity. You know, what other studio has made that many movies that quickly that are at that kind of quality bar for that many people? And I understand a lot of people hate the MCU and they're done with it. They'd rather see stuff from DC or whatever. I get it. Number 15 for me is Thor. And I'm going to, I think the big reason why I like Thor so much is because of Chris Hemsworth just, embodying this character in such a wonderful way. It was, again, expert casting, a terrific person to kind of invest all of that, the millions of dollars in, and to get sort of fans hyped up about it. I think this was a weird one. This was a choice by Marvel to say Thor can exist in the movie universe, and this was a strange thing. Who knew that this was going to work? We got all kinds of really incredible supporting actors in here. This was the first time that we get to see Loki, and it was funny and charming and fun, and some pretty cool action beats in this thing as well. Solid flick. So that was number 15. Number 14, I'm going to give it to Marvel's Iron Man 3, and I know a lot of people are choked about this flick because of the sort of subterfuge that happened around the Mandarin, but I thought that was one of the most enjoyable parts of the movie for me. Shane Black wrote this and directed this. I think Shane Black wrote this and directed this. I've got that info right down here. I'm not sure. Yeah, but it was great. Really crisp writing. A lot to say about the precariousness of being visible and out there as a superhero in the public eye. There was some real sort of stakes and the real menace involved in. We see Tony Stark's home getting destroyed here. It was amazing. It was a little cheesy when we got to the kid part, but I think the kid just served as a plot point to kind of humanize Tony Stark and to bring this this kind of invincible hero back down to earth a little bit, you know? And I thought that was pretty solid. It was just a really, really well-tuned movie. It got a bit noisy with all of the, you know, the robot battles at the end. It was just, there was just too much chaos, but it was slick, it was cool, and I think it helped to define Tony Stark's character better than the previous two Iron Man movies were able to do. And gave him a little bit more nuance. And they also dipped into the Extremis storyline, which is one of my favorite comic plots ever. And I was really happy to see all that stuff. And plus, as a toy collector, the amount of amazing Iron Men that were on display on screen here was ridiculous. So that was Iron Man 3 was number 14. Number 13, and this may piss some of you off because you may like it more than me, was Guardians of the Galaxy, the very first one, which I thought was very entertaining. I still gave it an 8.5, and I would stand by that. And I thought all of the actors and the performers and the characters were wonderful. But I also felt like it was, you know, not really like Ronan the Accuser was the bad guy, and I thought that he was kind of weak. He was kind of afterthought-ish, especially after we see him kind of kneeling and kowtowing to Thanos in the movie. I liked Nebula. I loved the relationship with her and Gamora as an introduction. What I like the most about this movie is the set pieces and the character and the universe galaxy kind of building that James Gunn and his team did. I think everybody came to the table with something very fresh and something very fun and addictive, and clearly the audiences around the world lapped it up, and sequels came and more are coming. But I felt like there was just something kind of missing from this origin tale that some of the other Marvel movies hit a little bit stronger. Still, terrific fun, very entertaining movie. That was number 13 for me. Number 12 is Ant-Man, and this was a movie that took a little bit of time for me to kind of grow to love. See what I did there? And it actually, I've said this before, but it was nuts, man. Like, I saw this in the theater, and it was, again, it's like when Marvel plays with these ingredients of humor and levity and action, and sometimes it can pull you out because it just feels like it's the formula is sort of on display there before the art is, you know. And so when I saw it, I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, the jokes weren't amazing, and I wasn't laughing about everything, and because there was such a dip towards jokiness, I didn't really feel like there was a real threat or there was a real menace. And so I kind of, I liked it, but it didn't blow me away. But then I saw it again, of all places, on an airplane, little tiny screen, and I was obviously captured in that environment. I couldn't go anywhere else, so I was locked in on a tiny screen. I watched Ant-Man, and I was howling, and I just loved the ingenious sort of elements in there. And Michael Pena is incredible in this movie. Like a hero's sidekick with that much charm. He outcharms Paul Rudd, which seems like a superpower unto itself. And of course, Paul Rudd is great in this. And Evangeline Lilly, we got a little taste of what she's going to be in the Wasp, in the Ant-Man and Wasp movie. Lots of fun ingredients, but it's also small, and I think that's kind of cool. It sort of stands in contrast to some of these huge cosmic and massive explosion type, Marvel flicks that we've seen before and since. And I think that they've earned their rightful place in the MCU, and it's a solid flick. And so I give that, that's number 12, and I would give that about an 8.5. Number 11, also at about an 8.5, is Doctor Strange. And this is a movie that gets trippy, and it has to get trippy. And it kind of knocks you out how trippy it becomes. It's like, oh my God, I can't even believe what I'm seeing here. But that's what Doctor Strange is. And every comic that I've ever picked up over the years, it's kind of lost me because it just gets into this metaphysical and all this magic talk and these interdimensional beings and these crazy creatures and visually. And I saw this in 3D with Jose, and it's like we got totally stoned and saw this thing because we came out and it was like, what happened? My brain has melted. And that's amazing. But it also, in all of this visual splendor, it kind of creates a remove a little bit. That's why I don't rate this movie higher. still another one of these Marvel flicks that just seems impossible, and they made it possible, and they made it believable, and they cast the perfect guy in Benedict Cumberbatch. I liked his relationship with Rachel McAdams. I like Benedict Wong as Wong, and Mads Mikkelsen. I love this guy every time I see him in a movie. He is so good, this guy. What an incredible actor he is. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, and also Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. I thought she was a great foil, a great... you know, sort of driven presence in there, and I thought that was really solid. But really, it is one of the biggest mind trips that movies have ever created. But that's sitting at number 11. Number 10 for me is Captain America: The First Avenger, and this, I think, is the movie that more than every other Marvel movie, I think this is the one, even though it starts with Iron Man in 2008, and then this one came out, I think, in right afterwards? No, it came 2011. Okay, so it took a few years before this one came out. And it's not perfect. There's some issues with Hugo Weaving's character. What's his name? I'm losing. Red Skull. It just looked a little fake in there, but boy, did they pick the perfect guy again with Chris Evans, you know, and that visual transformation of him being this virtuous, you know, guy that just wants to support the troops and fight for his country and stop at nothing, and then transform him into the ultimate soldier. Incredible. And I love the 40s aesthetic. I love that they got Joe Johnston, the guy that directed The Rocketeer, to direct this movie. They nailed all of that. The aesthetics are incredible. And I know that kind of turns a lot of people off because it isn't topical when you go back in time like this. It's not sort of pertinent like maybe some of the other Marvel movies have been able to do. You know, going for this Nazi kind of stuff was a bit... It needed to happen for this character, but it was a bit weird, right, to throw that in there. But I love the suit. I love the abilities of Cap as he's shown in the film. I loved all of his athleticism. I loved his relationship with Peggy Carter, and it has a glow, man. This movie just really, like, Iron Man is the cool and the sort of brains, I feel like, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Cap is all heart, and it's all just passion, you know? And they really started off strong with Captain America: The First Avenger. That's why it's coming in at number 10 for me. Number 9 is... what do I got here? Number 9 is Black Panther, and this is fairly recent, so I haven't had time to kind of see this multiple times and kind of really assess everything. This is a fluid list because, you know, obviously the more of these movies keep coming out, but Black Panther was absolutely astounding in its uniqueness. It's you know, obviously heroes and people and a culture that we don't traditionally see associated with these big, you know, huge studio movies like this. We haven't really seen heroes that are superheroes that are based out of Africa. We haven't seen a lot of that kind of technology associated with Africa. We haven't seen, you know, the literal colors that come from the environments and the costumes. And it was just really a beautiful movie. It was another one of these sumptuous visual sort of treats. But I think more than that, it was like these incredible performances, man. Chadwick Boseman is perfect as this humble, compassionate leader. And Letitia, I forgot her last name here. Letitia, oh God, where is it? As Shuri, Letitia Wright as Shuri was insane, so much fun to watch. Andy Serkis is great in this movie. Got a little silly with... Martin Freeman there and his ability to survive everything, I think, a little bit. But I love Lupita Nyong'o and Danae Gurira. I hope I'm saying these names right. But I will say that Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan, this is arguably the strongest bad guy that the whole MCU has had. And I think that Black Panther would not be the movie that it is without this man as sort of the villain, but you can understand his motivations so that he's much, much deeper and much bigger and much better than most of the other sort of, you know, mustache twirling bad guys that we see in a lot of these superhero movies. Incredible work, you know, and like everybody came to like show what they could do, from Ryan Coogler on down, this is a sensational movie. That's why it's number 9 for me. And number 8 is something that I just reviewed, and I'm not going to get right back into that because you guys just watched my review. Or if you haven't, if you're watching this as an archive, watch my review of Thor Ragnarok. But that's number 8 for me. Again, I just have seen this. I've seen this a couple times now because I watched this in home video. And it's, I think, a bit of a divisive movie because it leans too heavily into the comedy kind of aspects of Thor. But if you look at Chris Hemsworth's work, that's hard to say, in Avengers and the Thor movies and the other cameos that he's made in the other Marvels, the MCU movies, there always is this comedic kind of edge. He's always got this twinkle. I am so impressed with this guy as an actor. You know, he's got the physicality and he can do all of the stunt work and the fighting, and there's tremendous sort of, you know, stuff on display that showcases that in every one of the Thor movies, and this one in particular in his battle against Thor, or in his battle against the Hulk. But he's really a commanding presence, just, you know, in his way to communicate, and his physical comedy. It's incredible stuff, and I love this movie, and it really stands up to repeat viewings. Number 8 is Thor Ragnarok. Number 7 is maybe something you may disagree with as well. This is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where we get introduced to a new Groot. James Gunn has gone on record in saying that the Groot that we met in Guardians 1 died, and this is a seed that sprouted a baby Groot. And but you know what I loved about this movie, and it takes some weird tangential kind of misdirection kinds of things in here as well, where we go off on a different direction for a little while. We don't really understand why. But I loved the humanity that sort of comes in from around the edges on all of these characters. I felt bad for Rocket, you know. I really cared for this character. I was concerned about what was going to happen to Baby Groot. Michael Rooker also broke my heart in this movie, and I thought Kurt Russell was incredible. It was just awesome to see him kind of just like it was with Jeff Goldblum in Thor Ragnarok. It was amazing to see Kurt Russell, who has given us so much, you know, to kind of genre entertainment and genre cinema, to be kind of celebrated in this movie with a really cool role. And you know, all the effects and everything else also looked like they got juiced because the first Guardians made a lot of money, and James Gunn had some more stuff to kind of play with. Gorgeous movie. Great performances. We get to know these characters a little deeper. The laughs were all there, and it's also loaded with really cool action sequences and lots of amazing superheroics. I love this movie, and I can't wait to see where James Gunn takes. I have so much respect and admiration for what James Gunn has done here. Because again, this is what's amazing to me, is that these Marvel movies, you know, Doctor Strange and Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy, like, they're so esoteric and they're so out of nowhere, and yet they become these huge pop culture icons. Number 6 for me is going to be Iron Man, the original one from 2008. This is, you know, I would say that this is as perfect casting with Robert Downey Jr. This kind of a threat to a movie studio, you know, kind of it's something that maybe not everybody would bet on because of his, you know, his previous drug use and his criminal history. But he's perfect as Tony Stark. It's as perfect as Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, you know, and that you cannot conceive or think of anybody else to step in this role. It was a great origin story. You really had concern for the guy. Like, he really looked like he was at death's door, and how was he going to get out of this? And his wits take him out of it. His relationships with all the supporting actors were terrific as well. Gwyneth Paltrow and Jon Favreau is Happy. You know, I would say that the Jeff Bridges element was the only thing that was maybe a little weaker in there, and it was only because at the end you're just kind of, it looks like we're just looking at two action figures kind of bashing off of each other, and we lost a little bit of the I don't know, the humility and the humanity that they struggled so hard to inject into these suits, into the science behind everything, and at the end it just becomes like explosions and people fighting and stuff, and it was a little drop down at the end, but still an amazing movie, and I think it's an important one to revisit because of how much it led into. You know, it was basically the beginnings of this new way of looking at how universes can be represented on screen. You know, the juggernaut studio that is Marvel. Number 5 for me is also a very recent movie. This is Spider-Man: Homecoming. This is just from last year. Perfect casting again. Tom Holland was a terrific find, and you know, clearly respects the mantle that he's been given. There are a lot of challenges. The fact that they had to co-produce with Sony, and the fact that Sony had to basically wipe the table of all the Spider-Man iterations that they had done before. All of that could not have been easy. But they did a great job. And again, it's one of these grounded, smaller type of experiences that perfectly suits the character and the storylines. The fact that they made this kind of a John Hughesian version of Spider-Man was brilliant. Great sort of, you know, dapples of comedy throughout it. And again, a very strong choice in the villain as Michael Keaton as the Vulture, who is such an incredible performer, and I'm so glad that he is having a resurgence and is being asked to be in lots of cool pictures these days too. He's great in this. The Robert Downey Jr. sort of cameo bits in there were great. Love that Michael Mando is a part of the MCU as well now as the Scorpion. Spoiler alert. And it was just fun, man. It was just really, really well handled against you know, a lot of the skepticism that I think most of us could rightly have, because here was kind of a retelling of Spider-Man, of the Spider-Man myth on screen again. And the Donald Glover a bit in the movie was a very nice touch as well. Number 4 for me is The Avengers: Age of Ultron, and you know, this is a crowded movie. It's, again, another divisive movie. The consequences of the picture are still, we're still kind of feeling the ramifications of as the movies kind of went on. But it was also the introduction of the Vision. We got a sense of who, you know, Scarlet Witch is, and you know, it expanded the universe. And what happened here is that after the Avengers had kind of proven that a superhero team was possible on screen, the Avengers: Age of Ultron kind of had to scale up. And Joss Whedon had all of this pressure to kind of build up, and, you know, suddenly the MCU was exploding in all kinds of incredible territory. And it is a little too much, and you can feel the movie kind of busting at the seams and the weight of it kind of crushing down on everybody. But a lot of great seeds are sown in this, you know, like we get the idea that there might be a relationship between Natasha and Bruce, and that Hawkeye wants to retire, and, you know, I thought the James Spader performance was incredible as Ultron. It was very creepy, and the idea that the technology that Iron Man is so much a believer in may be their undoing, and sort of creating the rift between he and Captain America, which sort of plays into the Civil War. The Hulkbuster sequence, I mean, it was astounding to watch. There was a lot of stuff in this movie that you're just like, again, you cannot believe your eyes, you know? And seeing the Vision just sort of vaporize in between buildings and battling all of these robots, insane. I mean, there are comic panels springing to life in front of your eyes that you're like, how did they do this? And they did. Another incredible outing for the Avengers, and I can't wait to see what they do to top themselves with Infinity War. Number 3 is Captain America: Civil War. And for those keeping score and sort of following along here, there are 3 Captain America movies in my top 10, and this was terrific. We get a deeper sense of who Bucky Barnes is. Bucky Barnes is quickly becoming, as these movies progress, one of the most important people in the and characters within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it was a very intense kind of riff on the idea that these heroes are going to have massive disagreements, and what's that going to mean. It also had some really profound things to say about these vigilantes and their super heroics and what they can mean in the world in a kind of a realistic kind of way. I like that they brought back William Hurt to be the general again. I thought that was pretty cool. And of course, the epic battle at the airport was astounding, and the introduction of Spider-Man in this movie, the introduction of Ant-Man's new power to grow and be Giant Man. I don't know if you saw this movie in the theater, but it was like breathless when I saw it in the theater, and people were gasping and laughing, and a lot of holy shits were being thrown around as they were watching all this stuff. And of course, we got introduced to Black Panther as well in this flick. So the Russo brothers had come back after their terrific success with The Winter Soldier, and they showed that they could escalate, and they could even grow it even bigger. A little bit weak on the bad guy department. Zemo is kind of just in there to kind of tease what may happen later on. But some heaviness, some big stakes, and maybe not as epic a confrontation as we saw with the Civil War storyline in the comics, but we're edging towards that, and it's another remarkable achievement. Number 2 is Captain America Civil War, which was the Russo brothers at the helm for the first time. This is the more kind of 70s thriller kind of vibe on Cap, and sort of he's kind of a tool for the government, for S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, he's like this weapon that they can bring out, and he is just unfaltering in his belief that he's working for the right people, and he quickly has a lot of his beliefs shattered, and he doesn't know who to trust, and people that were his teammates suddenly become his enemies. I thought Frank Grillo was fantastic in this movie as well, by the way. It was crazy to see Robert Redford in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but he is really fun to watch in this movie. I love Nick Fury's sequence in this thing. But I think the standout for me, you know, other than Chris Evans, again, proving that he's the heart of this franchise, is the Winter Soldier himself is just so scary. You know, he's just truly menacing. And every time he's picking up a gun and blasting at our heroes, you feel like the end is nigh. And it really looks like that in several different times throughout the flick. It's one of those like intense experiences. Like you really go through stuff. I give this movie a 10. I actually give Civil War a 10, this a 10, and The Avengers a 10, which is my number 1 pick, which I'm going to get into here in a second. But this was amazing. Fantastic elevator sequence. Also the introduction of Falcon, who is Anthony Mackie, who is integral to the enjoyment of the whole MCU. Really, really fun stuff. And I've already spoiled it, but my number 1 is the original Avengers movie. When did the Avengers first come out? 2012. Yeah, this was... there's a bit of a personal thing here with this as well, because I got to see this with my friend Billy Campbell, who I got to know through interviewing him on EP. And he, of course, played the Rocketeer for Disney ages ago, and he's a terrific guy, and he's constantly working, and he's like, I just spoke with Sam, he's a vagabond, so he's in different places. He's working on Cardinal right now on CTV, but he came with Scott Jones and I to the screening of The Avengers, and I was like, you know, I'm a fan of Billy's from the Rocketeer, but I'm also watching these movies, or all these heroes come together for the very first time. I ain't never seen nothing like this, you know, like this scale with this effects budget and all these incredible characters. And the Hulk was just incredible in this movie. You know, the idea that Tony Stark has got these seminal lines like "I'm bringing the party to you," or Hulk smash, and it was just so much fun. I know that it's easy to pick this thing apart, and even when I saw it that first time, I could remember like the beginning is a bit of a drag as we're in this S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, and it's all sort of military, and it just felt like, okay, what's this tone going to be? And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I hope the Rocketeer likes this movie. And but we ended up loving the flick, and it was crazy because we saw it on the biggest screen in this theater in Vancouver, but it was a critic screening in the morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was maybe 20 people there, so it wasn't quite the uproarious, noisy whole theater filled with people kind of experience that you want for an event like this. But still, this movie got to me. The memories of it are huge, and Joss Whedon really pulled it off, man. Like, he made an impossible thing possible, and yeah, I freaking love this movie, and I forever will. The Avengers is my number 1 pick. Now, you've watched all this. I haven't been able to also follow along with you guys on the chat with this because I've been doing a tremendous amount of talking today. But I definitely want to... Oh, my God, look at all these notes here. Wow. Thank you all for coming, by the way. and being a part of this and being on the chat today. It's incredible. I hope you've enjoyed the show. But I didn't really get a chance to follow along, and we are running late, so I can't really get into getting all of your picks and stuff right now. But what I want you to do is under the archive, I want you to put your 18 together, put your list together. I want to read that, and I want to see your reasons why you've got the choices that you have. We don't have time for a Let's Play and Chat today. So we're going to do that tomorrow, and I'll put some Burnout Paradise into the show. But we are going to move on with a brand new buried treasure. Today's buried treasure is because of the Kirby Star Allies game that's on the Nintendo Switch. It got me thinking about all the great Kirby games that I love, and one of them is Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, which came out for the Wii U. Remember the Wii U? We're starting to call that the buried treasure machine. Kirby and the Rainbow Curse was kind of like a spiritual successor to Canvas Curse, which was an excellent DS game, also could qualify as a terrific buried treasure. You controlled Kirby by creating lines on the gamepad and having Kirby kind of navigate through all of these things. You could swipe up to have him roll upwards and do these jumps, and then you got to catch him just before he falls down. You can, you know, take over some abilities. You can become different vehicles within the game. A lot of sort of familiar Kirby mechanics and routines that we've seen in several other games. But I think the defining characteristic about this game is its unbelievably cool claymation aesthetic, which just looked amazing. And it came on the heels of the equally exceptional Kirby's Epic Yarn. There's so many Kirby games. It's hard to keep all these titles together. But Rainbow Curse was really, really slick and fun to play. I played this with my very young daughter at the time, and playing through Star Allies, it made me feel very reminiscent. I really wanted to go back to this game and play this one now with my somewhat older and wiser daughter. It's absolutely accessible. It's very kid-friendly. It's easy, but it's ridiculously well made. It's so unique and cool, and I love it. And I think that it's one of those fantastic games that you can point to on the Wii U that make that system special. And because it didn't sell that much, the machine, you can bet that there aren't that many people that have played this wonderful game. That's why Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is absolutely a buried treasure. Love me some Kirby. We're going to have our review of Kirby and Kirby Star Allies tomorrow. This is the brand new game that you can get for the Switch. I think very soon, but we'll have our review tomorrow for that. That's going to do it for us today. We went a little long, apologies, but I hope you had a good time. We had lots of information on today's episode of EP Live. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, we've got tons of content for you to check out, so please do that. And if you dig it, don't forget to hit subscribe. You got to hit that little bell so sometimes you get some notifications. Come on, YouTube. Always send notifications out to people that take the time to subscribe to things. And if you're so inclined, don't forget we have that sponsorship button too. Thank you all so much for watching and being here. Love you guys, and we'll be back again tomorrow with a brand new EP Live for you, and it's a good one. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.